infrastructure spending that shrinks our economy is not common sense. Democrats want a partisan wish list. They won't even build bridges. Weakening our southern borders and creating a crisis is not compassionate. A president who promised to bring us together should not be pushing agendas that tear us apart.
All right, that was South Carolina Senator Tim Scott last night delivering the GOP's response to President Biden's first address before a joint session of Congress, a scaled-down joint session of Congress. He began his speech, Scott did, by saying that President Biden seems like a good man. He also called out his policies, though, for being too divisive. Let's welcome in our panel today Patrice Leon-Wuka is with us. She is the director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at the Independent Women's Forum. She's also a Newsmax columnist. We also have back with us again Amanda Mackey and Jack Brewer, a retired NFL captain and CEO of the Brewer Group. Amanda, Jack, Patrice, great to see you all. And of course, you guys, I'm sure, saw this during Tim Scott's speech last night. He said America is not a racist country. And that comment apparently struck a nerve and brought out some hatred from the haters on Twitter, especially from the left. And I saw this, Patrice, Uncle Tim began to trend on Twitter as a result. And, you know, Tim Scott knows this. He's seen this before. He cuts against every stereotype that the left has of Republicans, and that's why they hate him so much.
Yeah, he is absolutely effective, John, and good to see you. Yeah, I thought his speech was excellent. And he represents everything that Democrats and so-called Black leaders, they fear. He has a compelling story. He comes from a background of having been in poverty, having been in welfare, having that hatred that angers a young Black man. But then he turned his life around with the help of someone who invested themselves in him. And now he is a Republican, and he advocates for those free market, limited government policies that inspire and empower the individual over government. And so when I saw that trending on Twitter, when I saw on social media, all people could talk about was that he's Uncle Tom and call him names. That tells me he was effective, and it's scaring those folks who build their businesses and their narratives around the Black people being held back.
Yeah, Amanda, when I saw that Tim Scott was tapped for this job, I was kind of like, oh, good luck, Tim Scott, because it doesn't always go very well for everyone. I mean, we can think about the Marco Rubio incident with the water. Not a career killer, of course, but it didn't propel him into any place he wanted to go. There was that weird kind of thing with Michelle Bachmann, no relation, but she was kind of looking off camera that one time. And it didn't really resonate well. It's a tough thing to do, to follow up the presidential address here. But this could be the exception to the rule, Amanda, with Tim Scott here. Definitely elevated himself with that speech yesterday.
Yeah, I'll mention another one for you, Bobby Jindal.
I forgot about that one, too. That was a rough one.
Lest we forget. So I think he did an incredible job. I don't think there was any dispute of that. The Democrats clearly struck a nerve with them because what was trending on Twitter? Uncle Tom, Uncle Tim. So that really just tells you what a great job he did. But his story, as Patrice said, resonates with people, flunking out of school, basically, and then becoming a senator from cotton to Congress in one generation. These are the types of American dream stories that people want to hear about and resonates with people. People love hearing this, whether you're Republican or Democrat, but he had so many notable quotes last night. They won't even build bridges to build bridges, Right. That's the kind of thing he said. President Trump, COVID brought us together 5 times. We united 5 times to deliver on COVID relief, and this administration is pushing us apart. And so I think he had some great quotes. He had some great one-liners, and I think he's really set himself up for 2024.
Yeah, Jack, I don't know how. This has to be one of the most annoying criticisms of guys like you and Tim Scott. Every time you come out and you don't take the normal Democratic position, like they expect you guys all to fall in line and all believe what they believe. You get called an Uncle Tom for taking a different position. How does that feel to just try to advocate for, your Christian faith, your conservative values, your work ethic, the free market. And if you advocate for those things as a Black man in America today, you are called racist names.
John, as I'm hearing the other esteemed panelists speak, and I'm just thinking about the comments being made to Tim and thinking back all the times that similar comments have been made about me. It really saddens me, because, personally, I've been dealing with, the spirit of not always reacting and not, I'm a fighter, I'm an alpha. If someone says something to me, I punch back. But this stuff now is getting to the point where it's so deep that it hurts, man. It hurts to see that, Black culture and the left have this narrative where even a man as intelligent, as well-spoken, as accomplished as Tim Scott, he can't even get respect in today's society. But they'll go in and they'll uplift someone who is mass aborting Black babies, someone who's voting against school choice and educating Black kids.
Jack, we see murals of George Floyd all over the country. May he rest in peace. But, this guy was in the commission of a crime while he was killed by the police. You don't see murals of guys like Tim Scott. He's too busy working and not drawing attention to himself by keeping his head down. And I think it was also gross to see this fact check story by the Washington Post not too long ago, Glenn Kessler calling out Tim Scott's family for having owned land in the South once upon a time, a long time ago. I mean, most people would say, wow, that's impressive to think of a Black family owning land in the Deep South all these years ago. But Patrice, if you read this Washington Post fact check, it's like Tim Scott is trying to hide his privilege from his past, which is completely ridiculous.
It is. But I think when we look back at a lot of institutions in our history, including a lot of Ivy League colleges, have very troublesome histories when it comes to slavery in this country. So let's move on past this. Let's say, that happened in the past. Let's figure out how we can empower all people, Black people included, and move forward. I will say, though, what's interesting is when I look for some fact checks today, even CNN's fact checked, I believe it was CNN, they had to give him 100% right for everything he said.
There's that too. And I want to talk about this real quick before we go to break too, because CNN took another poll of their audience, and here's what they found. 51% of them had a very positive reaction to the speech, but that's less than the 57% who had a very positive reaction to President Trump's first address in 2017. So Biden underperforming in this category, according to CNN of all places. So I love empirical evidence. You got it on your screen. Guys, great to see you. Great conversation. Patrice, Amanda, and Jack will be coming back with us. In the next hour, we're going to talk more about Rudy Giuliani being targeted by the FBI. Also coming up, we're going to bring you the latest on that Arizona audit. Some good news for. Thanks so much for joining us on Thursday, April 29th. We're going to have a full breakdown of President Biden's first congressional address from last night, but we begin this hour with Rudy Giuliani. Federal agents yesterday raiding the apartment of the former New York City mayor, former U.S. attorney, and former Trump attorney. They seized computers and cell phones as part of the Justice Department's investigation into Giuliani's business dealings. He has been the focus of a long-running investigation concerning his activities in Ukraine. That includes whether he conducted illegal lobbying for Ukrainian officials during President Trump's years in office. Also, he's accused of trying to damage then-rival Joe Biden on behalf of President Trump. Giuliani, of course, has not been charged, and he has denied any wrongdoing. And we are joined now by Andrew Giuliani, of course, the mayor's son. He spoke to reporters as well yesterday after the raid. We'll talk to Andrew in a second, but here's what he said yesterday.
This is disgusting. This is absolutely absurd, and it's the continued politicization of the Justice Department that we have seen. And it has to stop. If this can happen to the former president's lawyer, this can happen to any American. Enough is enough.
Joining us now is a former special assistant to President Trump and our friend Andrew Giuliani. Andrew, great to see you.
John, great to see you too. I apologize for this. We're just traveling around New York State, and that's why we're in the car right now. And it's pouring outside, so there's nowhere to go outside.
Well, look, I know you're out there working on this issue. There was also some discussion about you running for governor. It's interesting to see the FBI raiding the apartment of America's mayor while we have the current governor of New York walking around with impunity after being accused of killing thousands of New York seniors and groping multiple women. But this is where the priority of the FBI is. But tell us, Andrew, what actually happened yesterday. It's my understanding that this obviously conversation had been going on for a long time. Your dad had been fully cooperating with the FBI. Why did they feel the need to knock down the door and come raid the apartment?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, right? He had been cooperating with the FBI and answering whatever questions they may have had. And I think they need to change a news cycle, right? You had John Kerry, who had his issues. You had Joe Biden, who they couldn't rely on to be able to get through his address last night. So I look at this as completely political. I think they're very worried about what my father has on Hunter Biden's laptop. And when you asked what actually happened yesterday, well, they came in to seize devices, right? The one device, the one that they did not seize was Joe Biden's laptop. That's the only one. Hunter Biden's laptop is the only one that they did not seize. Why did they do it? I just wonder why. I wonder why.
I mean, again, I'm trying to think of this too. A reason why? Maybe they already have it. I don't know. I mean, we do know that Hunter Biden is under a criminal investigation as well into his tax issues. But it does, it's a head scratcher, Andrew. Why they would be so concerned about everything else besides the copy of Hunter Biden's laptop?
I really think this is just politically motivated. Why aren't they interested in James Clapper lying to Congress about the National Security Association, the NSA? Why aren't they concerned about John Brennan lying to Congress, both under penalty of perjury, about the CIA and their spying? They treat people associated with Donald Trump much differently than they treat Democrats. It's that simple. And if the American people can't see it by now, I don't know what else they need to do to open their eyes. Yeah. So as I said yesterday, enough is enough. If this can happen to the former president's lawyer, John, it can happen to you. It can happen to me. It can happen to any of Newsmax's wonderful viewers. And we need to stop this before this truly becomes like a red army, more or less.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Andrew, when you hear about reports of Rudy Giuliani's apartment being raided by the FBI, while we're watching American cities be burned to the ground, doesn't seem to be a big concern to the FBI and those things. It just doesn't feel like this is America to a lot of people anymore. I want to expand out the conversation now and welcome in former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, who also, of course, served under Rudy Giuliani, and our friend, former U.S. Attorney and the founder of the Tolman Group, Brett Tolman, as well, to talk a little bit about this. Bernie, I know you tweeted out almost immediately after this happened yesterday, you called this thuggery by the FBI. Talk to us about that.
Well, listen, I think there's a couple issues that people have to realize. First and foremost, that the mayor and his attorney, Bob Costello, made several attempts over the last year and a half to communicate with the FBI and cooperate any way they could. So the FBI could have subpoenaed anything they wanted. They didn't have to do a search warrant. Second thing is the laptop from hell, Hunter Biden's laptop. The mayor made 3 attempts to give it to him. He even told them what was on it. Child porn, SEC violations, 3 different FARA violations, and criminal conduct between Hunter Biden and the president of the United States today. And they refused. The electronic devices was on that search warrant. They should have taken it. And Brett can talk more on this. The last thing is the attorney-client privilege.
Right.
The mayor was the personal attorney for the president for 2 years. Everything he communicated to the legal defense team for the president is on those devices. They should not have been taken. And if I was the president today, I'd be in court invoking my privilege to get those things seized from the FBI and put away.
Yeah, I think I'm a little surprised there is not an injunction or a demand for an injunction right now, Brett. But talk a little bit more about what Bernie was saying there, the legal aspects of this. I mean, the attorney-client privilege is sacrosanct in this country, and is a cornerstone of having a real functioning judicial process in this country. And it does seem like that's what they're after here, those privileged communications.
Yeah, John, I'll tell you, I appreciate you going into some of the weeds on this. One thing that we're starting to learn, more and more about the search warrant, but it's my understanding, and this should trouble everyone, that there was at least an attempt, possibly 2 attempts to get this search warrant previously, and they were denied by the Department of Justice. As soon as the new administration comes in, lo and behold, they're able to get a search warrant, and they go in and they raid the office of the former U.S. attorney. So the very office that he was in charge of, they now are, instead of granting him the courtesy or listening to their request to cooperate, to turn over information, They instead do what they know will get publicity, and that is taking the Department of Justice to a political level that's unfortunate. Now, keep in mind, John, they knew going into this there would be a lot of information they would find that is privileged,
right.
Whether that's executive privilege or whether it's the attorney-client privileged. And so what do they have to do? They now have to assemble a taint team to actually review everything, and they'll have to do that over months, if not longer. So they'll be able to utilize this as a talking point and a leverage point in the months to come.
And you can imagine what's going to happen here. The leaks are going to start coming out, unverified, undocumented reports of what's in and on this computer. And of course, the media will run with it without any real verification, what we know and what we don't know. I mean, we saw this, guys. We saw this yesterday at Rudy's apartment. We've also seen them seize electronic devices from lawyer Victoria Tenzing, who's a regular guest here on Newsmax TV. We talked a little bit about Matt Gaetz. His reputation has been ruined now without any real evidence. There's no one on the record accusing him of anything that he's been accused of doing. We could also show the video of Roger Stone. Questions, Andrew, about what the FBI's priorities are. Are they really representing all of America, or are they just working for a few folks here?
You nailed it, and I think both Brett and the commissioner nailed it as well. They've become completely politicized. You know, one of the things in what you were saying there, John, that reminded me of this was, there's so many great men and women that I worked with in the White House and in the Trump administration who are being blacklisted right now from getting a job because they worked in the White House for Donald Trump. That's what we're dealing with here now, John. I mean, it happens in the FBI. It's coming from all different levels of government. It's coming from the media. And it's because the media will put pressure on any organization, whether you're a governmental organization, whether you're a private business, that if you associate with Trump, they're going to try to do everything they can to destroy your business and destroy your life.
Right.
And it really, really is scary. I mean, it's Stalin-esque tactics here.
Bernie, I had the chance, and you know this, of course, better than most folks. You ever get the chance to talk to Rudy about his work as a U.S. attorney, taking down the mafia in New York City, and how careful he was during those investigations and prosecutions to avoid even the slightest appearance of impropriety here. And what we're seeing now with what's going on is the complete opposite. The FBI, the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, they do not care how this looks. They only care about their objective.
That's what's most frightening, John, because the FBI and the Department of Justice has turned into an enforcement arm of the Democratic Party. That's what's happened. That's what they are today. And that's what we're seeing. But
Bernie, I think it goes bigger. It's bigger than that. It's not just the Democratic Party. It's the uniparty. It's the swamp. It's the establishment, the deep state, the military, industrial, intelligence complex that has metastasized over the last 15, 20 years.
And think about it, John. That's exactly what everything you just said is exactly why they despise Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump was against the swamp. Period. Whether it was military, justice, Congress, Senate, didn't make any difference. Donald Trump was against the swamp, and that's why they loathe him.
Yeah, Brett, let's focus on this next, on what's coming next, I should say. What do you anticipate now? How is Mayor Giuliani protecting himself? What does he need to do in terms of his legal defense team? What's coming next?
Well, first of all, if anyone out there is afraid the FBI is coming after him, perhaps, and they have a search warrant, just tell them that what they're looking for is evidence of the Biden corruption or Biden crimes, and apparently the FBI won't care about it. It's aggravating to me to see inconsistency. And right now, Mayor Giuliani, he knows what he has to do. He'll have good lawyers. They'll make sure that their communications with the government are very careful and very strategic. He's a target for sure now. They've identified that. But frankly, what I've heard in terms of what the scope of this investigation may be, they'll be hard pressed if his registering as a lobbyist, for example, and contacts with foreign governments is the basis for this investigation. you can go back over the last several decades, and there are multiple people that could be at risk of this. He's going to have, he's going to have the ability to defend himself, and in the end, unless they have something else, there's not there's not a pot of gold for the Department of Justice on a prosecution like this. It's the process and the ability to use this politically that they're going to be capitalizing on.
They're hoping that the ends justify the means here. Andrew, last word to you. How is your dad holding up?
He's good. He's so resilient. And Bernie knows this just as well, right? I mean, he's a tough guy. Bernie, you had to work for him. I never had to work for him. So, I mean, God bless you. But he's a tough guy. I mean, look, when the mafia puts a contract on you, when you get through September 11th, when you've been through everything that he has been representing the president over the last 4 years, you develop thick skin. He's as tenacious and resilient of a fighter as I've ever seen. And his spirit is absolutely great. I actually probably think Bernie's probably seen him since I've seen him, as the last time I saw him was yesterday evening. And I know Bernie was with him last night. So Bernie can speak to that. But God bless you, Bernie. I never had to work for him because he's tough, I'll tell you that. But he's a loving father, too.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. We'll check back in with all you on all these angles. Bernie's actually going to stick around with us. We're going to talk a little bit more about the situation in North Carolina and the police attrition we're seeing across the country as well. Our thanks to Andrew Giuliani and Brett Tillman. We'll be right back after this. Police shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. And as you saw there, the family and law enforcement have two completely different stories about what led up to the fatal shooting. Yesterday, a judge blocked the public from viewing body cam footage from that shooting for 30 days. A family and a lawyer have also, the family and a lawyer have also had access to the footage privately, though, only 20 seconds of that footage. And New York City police officers also lining the streets to honor the death of a fellow cop who was fatally struck by a hit-and-run driver. 43-year-old officer Anastasia Staskos was on the Long Island Expressway in Queens around 2 a.m. on Tuesday when he was struck by a drunk driver. The suspect was driving with a suspended license. The New York Post reports the suspect was going on an anti-police rant on Facebook Live, just before she killed, allegedly, Officer Staskos. Now, later, she confessed to guzzling vodka, drinking wine, and also smoking marijuana before the deadly accident. You see the officer that we lost right there. Let's bring in former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik to talk more about this. He's also a Newsmax contributor, and also back with us as well, retired New York City Police Detective Oscar Odom. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Bernie, let's start with you on the North Carolina situation. We've talked about how tense things are. You have the family with their attorneys standing right there talking about this being an extrajudicial execution. And of course, we have the official record there from law enforcement and the court record, which was delivered under oath, that the suspect here backed up his car in the direction of police and also drove towards police while they were trying to pursue him. He had a long drug history, too, as well, a long, lengthy rap sheet. And the thing I want to talk about here is, you hear some people talk about traffic stops as if they are mundane or routine part of the job, but they are, in fact, one of the most dangerous parts of the job.
They are the two most dangerous parts of law enforcement in general, police work, daily police work, are traffic stops and domestic violence jobs, domestic violence calls. We had 2 cops shot and killed in North Carolina yesterday on a domestic. The bottom line is, and I give the judge credit in this case that has held off the release of this, the body cam, John, for this reason. You know what? Let the investigation be conducted. Don't hamper the investigation. Don't interfere with it. Don't put out there nefarious claims. Let the investigation take its course. And let the investigators, and a thing like this, it's going to be investigated by the county, by the state, and possibly, based on the claims, the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. So let the investigators do their job, right, and then you'll get to see the body cam.
Right. These investigations take a long time. And Oscar, the thing is everyone says, well, look, why are you hiding this stuff when you hold it back here? But, these things take time. And what people see on video these days becomes a Rorschach test. The reason why we play the different sound from the family versus the official court proceedings there is you can see how different these folks view this video.
And I agree with what former commissioner was saying when we look at this. I always do things through a scholar practitioner approach, from academic, because as I told you before, I have a doctorate in education. I also have law degree. And I was the former first deputy sheriff commissioner in New York City. I also taught in the New York City Police Academy, and I used to teach car stop workshops. And car stops are one of the most dangerous parts of police work because there's so much of an unknown factor that is going in. You don't know what the person may do. You don't know what's going on with the vehicle, how they may use the vehicle. So that's part of the process when you do that. And a lot of police officers get injured and or killed during car stops. However, I think that given the climate that we have now that we're going on, it requires, of course, a good investigation to look over to see exactly what happened, review the footage, conduct an investigation so that the proper information will be revealed to the family and the public.
Yeah, the thing we see, Bernie, when it comes to the body camera footage here, everyone thought this was going to be, a magic thing. It was going to clear up all this stuff here. But what happens is the way the body camera footage is portrayed sometimes, again, people don't like it when it doesn't fit the narrative of what they're, this police aggression and stuff. And what we've seen over and over again is that's not always the case.
Yeah, John, that's a really good point. And here's the other thing I think people have to realize. This is probably the fifth, in my recollection, probably the fifth fatal shooting by police in the last 3 months, 2 months. The fifth one where the suspect would be alive today if he did not resist.
Right.
That is a major problem, whether it's coming out of a car, whether it's using the car as a weapon, whether it's resisting arrest on the side of a highway, whether it's resisting arrest in a narcotics arrest in downtown Detroit. The bottom line is, once you resist, once you assault the officer, once you attempt to run, the officer has no choice but to use force. And should that force escalate, they could use deadly force. And in this situation, it's another time was resistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last night, George, we saw the president talk about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and he wants to time it, Oscar, to the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. Does that make any sense whatsoever? I mean, trying to rush this thing through, I guess you could do it if you were going to actually rely on Tim Scott's bill. That seemed like a decent step in this direction here. But Democrats want to do this on their own, and Joe Biden wants to use the anniversary of George Floyd's death to push this. Do you think that's fair?
Well, I think what happens is both sides need to come to the table and sit down. The date, may be memorable to them, but I think it needs to be fair. And one of the issues that concerns me with that, of course, is qualified immunity. And I always say, are doctors allowed to operate without medical malpractice insurance? So if the answer is no for that, I think there needs to be some sort of understanding when it comes to qualified immunity for police officers. That's a stickler with me.
Yeah, it's a good point, especially considering that your average police officer makes a lot less than your average doctor. So it would be just that much harder for them to have to carry this type of insurance. That's what some people have actually proposed with this qualified immunity, but it is difficult and a complicated issue. Guys, we appreciate it. Bernie, Oscar, thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Coming up, President Biden delivered his first joint address before Congress, kind of a hollowed out congressional chamber there. We're going to talk more about that coming up with our panel, and also talk about Senator Tim Scott and his rebuke to Joe Biden's address last night. Don't go away.